very welcome along to the Kickback. It's me, Richie McCormack, alongside Brian Kerr, and we have just seen Brentford hold on ultimately for a 4-3 victory at home to Manchester United. 2 goals from Kevin Shada either side of the break, both from headers. Mikkel Damsgaard's crossed effort was turned into the Manchester United goal by Luke Shaw, and it was made 4-1 then by Johan Wissa, but United found themselves back into the game. Alejandro Garnacho's brilliantly curled effort made it 4-2. 4-3 then it was when Amad Diallo's shot was turned via a nick off the knee of Sepp van den Berg through the legs of Mark Flecken, and it made for an interesting final 90 seconds or so at the Gtech Community Stadium. But it does cement Brentford's status as potential European hopefuls. They are just a point behind Bournemouth now in 9th in the table as we speak here. Manchester United, of course, staying where they are. Another defeat for them in West London. They have 3 games to go in the Premier League now, and their last away game will also be in West London against Chelsea. But their minds were very much on Thursday and that second leg against Athletic Club of Bilbao, as borne out by the 8 changes this afternoon, Brian. And that kind of influenced how United went about the game this afternoon.
Yeah, I think so. It was very clear that that the manager and the whole club, the priority has become, let's win this Europa League and qualify through the back door into the Champions League. And there probably has to be some debate about whether a team that finishes 14th, 15th, 16th or 17th in the league should be getting into the Champions League. It's one of the things that when UEFA decided to change the drop down from the Champions League group stages, where teams who used to finish third in the group dropped into the Champions League, they've stopped that in the last couple of seasons. And it's meant that the quality of the Europa League is not as good, but it gives the opportunity for a team who hasn't done very well in the domestic league to get back into the Champions League, as the case with both Tottenham Hotspur and Manchester United, who are, I would say, United are in a commanding position. A home game in the second leg, Spurs not quite so. But when that's the approach of the manager, when the team selection is so obvious to the players and they're saying, well, it doesn't really matter if we win today or not, you are going to have the sort of disjointed performance that we saw from Manchester United today. I mean, we've seen plenty of them this season when they picked what he thought was his best team available, but today it was even more so with young, Amos playing the left, young Fredrickson playing right side centre half position, Dogu in the right wing back spot, the young Chino Obi up front. It was a selection which was about protecting players for towards the night that are going to be important to them. But they did okay in the match. There were spells in the game did quite well. Mason Mount did well. Garnacho did particularly well on creating the goal and making the goal. And he did a few other. He should have equalised just before half time, and Brentford had been well on top. So it was in many ways a typical Manchester United performance, except that they scored more goals than they usually do. They haven't scored enough goals this season. They scored goals today, but defensively they were poor and rarely looked settled in the game. Although they almost pulled something out of the bag, but undeservedly, I would have said, had they got a point.
Nathan Collins won a laugh and all applauded, obviously, for their performance against Forest on Thursday night for Brentford, with that assist for Kevin Shada. This afternoon, cut out of position for United's opener, which was scored by Mason Mount. He was kind of bullied at times by 17-year-old Cheeto Obi Martin and cut out of position on a couple of occasions, not necessarily quick to get the balls that led to United goals. It wasn't for all the positives that came out of Brentford's performance today, and there were many, and their front four are possibly responsible for the majority of them. He looked not at it completely.
No,
today.
well, look, I wouldn't have been too severe on him about the first goal, in that he was chasing a ball that the goalkeeper Flecken missed, kicked towards the touchline, skied her up in the air, and Collins tried to keep her in play with a header back inside. He wasn't able to recover from there because Manchester United moved the ball on quickly. Mainu out to Garnacho in the wide position, whipped her in, and both the centre backs were out of position. The full back Lewis Potter didn't make it ahead of Mount, who took her into the net. But I just felt in general today they looked unsettled, the pairing together. Now whether that's a bit of tiredness, I mean, he did a great job the other night against Harry Wood. I don't think he gave him a clear opportunity in the match, which is a fair achievement given the performances of Harry Wood this season. It was a fantastic win, 2-0 win, and won the previous game against Brighton 4-2. He's the only outfield player along with Virgil van Dijk, who's played every minute of every match for his club this season. That is a bit special when you're on game 35. But I don't think he had the best of his games today. His distribution was fine during the match. His clearances generally were fine. I just felt there was an awkwardness between the pair and a nervousness between the pairing. It's
an odd thing 35 games in for the chemistry to suddenly be off.
Yeah, but I don't know quite what that was. Well, maybe there was the acceptance that they were comfortable today because Manchester United had a lot of young boys playing around the pitch, but they didn't. They didn't. I wasn't surprised that they conceded late goals, given what I'd seen in the game up until then. They still were playing it quite open. They still had lots of players up the pitch trying to retreat. They usually retreat very quickly and get numbers back, but maybe those games, the Thursday night game, the lack of freshness in their team told against them late in the match. But look, they got there in the end when they made the changes. They were a little bit better when Jensen gave them a bit. The full-backs didn't make much difference. Christopher Ayer coming on.
Coyote looked well though when he was at right back there.
He was very good.
A really good I guess tool with his long throw. He also looked like he was able to get forward. He's able to defend. He's able to do a bit of everything, and still only 20 years of age.
Yeah, very, very, very good signing for them. Was it Fiorentina? I think he came from, and he hadn't played a huge number of games. It just shows you again the quality of the recruitment of spotting a talent like him who hadn't played a lot of games. And looks like he has become the first choice ahead of some of those more experienced players like Christopher Ayer and Rico Henry and one or two others that have played in those defensive positions. Pinnock's another one who's played in those positions, Ethan Pinnock, in the last few years. But they've got that energy now from the full back positions that's made them a very good, consistent Premier League team, you'd have to say. I mean, they're chasing one of the European spots this year, which could go down to 9th.
They need a bit of luck, I think. Yeah.
Well, they need a good set of results in the last 3 games. I think it's just slightly out of reach for them.
We'll see. But their front four, as it is, between Damsgaard centrally and Bomo to the right, Shad to the left, Wissa through the centre. Like, it's hard. Like, when you think Shad has got up to 10 goals now, it's 18 goals for Wissa, 18 for Mbomo. That's a hell of a
46 between.
That's a brilliant return. I think they've scored 60 odd in total, so it shows how much they haven't missed ultimately. Ivan Toney this season, and Mbomo has won a list of suitors, which apparently includes Manchester United. Would he be an upgrade on what United have if he was the head there, or how would you see him fitting in?
I don't know. I mean, he'd have to. He's not an out and out centre forward. At least they don't play him there as a centre forward. They play him from the right in a 4-2-3-1. He's not particularly pacey. He's quite tricky on the ball, but it's a combination between his strength and his technical ability, I think, and his directness that makes him so effective for Brentford. And we see with Brentford, there's not a lot of messing about in the wide positions. It's about getting the ball into the box and make sure we have a crowd in there to fight for it. I don't know if you play in one of those number 10 positions as Amorim is demanding of, say, Mason Mount, who's come from enough there. Garnacho playing there, I think he's struggled to adapt to it a lot of the times this season. Thought he played well today. He's at his most effective when he's drifting to the left, getting crosses in there. But we've seen with Brentford that they are able to recruit well and even replace the likes of even Toney, who was the main goal scorer. That goals total this year between those front 3 is very, very impressive indeed. And who knows what they've got lined up to replace if they lose another one of those forwards. But certainly it's an impressive unit as a team for a club that were languishing in the Tour division of football not that many years ago, and they're only up in the Premier League for the 4th season now. I
know it was 8 changes for United, but the team that was on the field when they did fall 4-1 down, by the time they fell 4-1 down, looked more like the one that was playing at San Mamés on Thursday night. If Bilbao players were watching that this afternoon as they prepare for the Basque Country derby this evening, will they be filled with a little bit of renewed optimism that they can go to Old Trafford and get something?
I'm sure that they come out of the game the other night very, very disappointed indeed, because they started quite well in the game and they had a few opportunities. Lindelof made an amazing block at a crucial time in the game early on before the goals came. and they had the player put off, which at the time, I don't know, I thought it looked a bit harsh, but the consequences of the penalty and the sending off were, you know, astounding, I say, for Bilbao in the circumstances where they knew the final at home, if they could come through the two legs. But I think they would have got encouragement from Manchester United's performances all season. And even you go back to the Lyon game and the change in the fortune of that, when United led by a couple of goals twice in that game and ended up scrambling through in the end with Harry Maguire's header to make it 5-4 after extra time. That, I think, is encouragement, and the consistency of Manchester United's inconsistency, if you get me, this season.
Sure.
I think 16 defeats now in the league, a points total of at the moment of 39 with 3 games left. That in itself is enough encouragement to say it's not like they're going to the most hostile venue in Europe. It's not like they're going to a venue where everyone's been delighted with how the season has gone. So they'll be going on Thursday night and saying, well, if we get the first goal in the match and take it from there. But you would think that Manchester United, with 3-0 up, with having rested most of the key players today in the game, should be able to see this through. But we don't know. We'll have to wait and see how the game goes on Thursday.
That's for Thursday. Brian, for now, thanks so much for joining us on the
Thanks,
Kickback.
Richie. Thanks. Great game today.